opening recitations. So if you have the pacceka, this text here is page 73. If not, again, just listen. Yeah, just listen to the words. And then if somebody knows how to share documents on the chat for the Zoom, I think some of you have the documents that I shared to a while ago. So basically the opening and dedication booklet, that PDF, and then the PDF for the 4 sessions Guru Yoga. Yeah, those 2 PDFs, if you know how to share, please share it on the chat, and then someone can, those of you who then know what to do with that can have it. Otherwise, there is a WhatsApp group called Localized Programs. Again, if somebody here knows how to send that link to join that WhatsApp group, please share it on the chat in Zoom, so that you can join that WhatsApp group. Minimal traffic, no discussions, no chit-chat there, just announcements on what I'm doing and things like that. Yeah. And so again, if somebody who knows what to do, how to do it, please share it in the Zoom chat. And then if you are on Facebook, you can share that information as well, I suppose. So anyway, let's begin with the recitation for generating the bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, referring to the desire or the commitment to achieve the state of perfect Buddhahood for the benefit of both self and other, where self and other have equal importance. So this, in a nutshell, consists of 2 components, 2 aspects. Yeah, this citta, this type of mind, this type of heart. One is a commitment to waking up, to becoming Buddha, to completely waking up, and to become a complete and perfect Buddha. So that entails the wisdom aspects. Then to wake up to become Buddha, not just for ourselves, but more importantly, for the sake of all mother sentient beings. So that's the love and compassion aspect. So these are the 2 aspects of bodhicitta, actually. And so sometimes the first aspect, the aspect of wisdom, is called absolute bodhicitta, and then the love and compassion aspect is called relative bodhicitta. Here, absolute and relative, they are not like 2 words used to suggest a hierarchy, meaning absolute is better, relative is temporary and not so amazing. No, absolute and relative here refers to how, from the perspective, from one perspective, there is absolutely no difference and separation between self and other. But from another perspective, while still living, and of course we live in a world where we are in a relative world where there is subject and object. So in the world of subjects and objects, having healthy boundaries, for example, having a healthy sense of self, a self that is grounded in the virtues of generosity, of disciplined conduct, of patience, of joyful effort, of meditative concentration. These are really important to have a healthy sense of self. Then with this healthy sense of self, then we can live more authentically, more altruistically. And that all of these five, the first five, depends on wisdom, the six, and these are known as the six paramitas. So we begin with the generating bodhicitta, then followed by taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and then a very brief reminder of the four immeasurable minds of loving kindness, metta, karuna, compassion, mudita, joy, and upeksha, equanimity. Om other sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. All other sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. All other sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. Thus, until I achieve Buddha, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind until death. I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind from now until this time tomorrow. I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. I want to briefly say something, So the opening recitation, all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky. So that means all beings without exception, an infinite number of beings, towards all of them whom we regard to be as kind to us as our parents have been to us in this lifetime. So aim to view all of them as being that kind to us and to relate to them as our mothers. So limitless as the sky. And then highlighting especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. So here, the first two, enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, these are in a way mundane problems. The last group is those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. These are the trouble that come when we are committed to the path of awakening. So these are kind of like the more dangerous. Right now, we only are concerned with those whom we perceive to be enemies, whom we perceive to hate us. Right now, we are only concerned with, those who stand in our way. So obstructors who harm me, those who stand in our way of us getting what we want. These are the obstructors who harm. And in fact, these two groups, from the perspective of waking up, of becoming Buddha for the benefit of all, they are kind of not such a big deal. But how many of us actually walk around like that, Probably very few. But those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, here, way more subtle as to who these people are. Not so obvious. In fact, the people who seemingly we label as we don't want to be separated from, they could be the ones who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. But regardless, with all three groups, the point here is not we turn Dharma into poison if we walk around very firmly fixated on the idea these are enemies, these are obstructors, these are obstacles. In fact, to say that they are mother sentient beings is a way to get into a completely different way to relate to others. And that also changes the way we live our lives. It means to be less suspicious of others, to be less paranoid of others, to be less worried about this person say this about me, that person says that about me, because all these are simply burdens that we carry around in our heads and in our hearts. There's the story, right, of I think from the Zen tradition, but I think I've seen various incarnations of this story about two monks traveling, and they came to a river, a pretty kind of fierce river that they had to cross. There's no other way to cross but to wade across the river. And then they saw that there was a woman who was trying to get across, but she looked very uncertain about that crossing. So one of the two monks went up to the woman and said, are you trying to cross? The woman said, yes. And the monk said, me too. Here, jump on my back. I'll carry you across. Now, of course, maybe to us, we're like, oh yeah, how nice, how wonderful. But you have to remember, in more traditional contexts in society, this is not allowed. As in, the monk's conduct is such that you're not supposed to have physical contact with those of the opposite sex, opposite gender. You're not supposed to do that. And anyway, so this monk, and the woman is like, really? You're willing to do that? He's like, yeah, of course, we're just going to cross. So this monk, so she jumped on the monk's back and crossed. And then, of course, the other monk was just aghast, oh my gosh, So then they crossed to the other side of the river, and the monk let the woman down, and then he kept going. Then this other monk, the whole time, was really disturbed until finally he said to the monk who volunteered, and said, like, why did you do that? How could you carry a woman like that? And then the monk who volunteered looked at the other monk and said, oh, you still carrying her? I dropped her off, the moment we crossed the river. Yeah, so we still carry, we carry it in our minds, we carry it in our hearts, And when you walk around perceiving this person, that person, that person, this person to be against you, to be against your interest, maybe, objectively, meaning from the side of the other person, maybe they do regard you that way. But they are not with you 24/7 unless you allow them to be with you 24/7. Meaning you let them haunt you in your heart, in your minds. So now, what's the purpose? More burdens, more dukkha, more suffering. So this prayer is saying, trained to see them as mothers, trained to see them as most kind. Then a softness grows in our heart, a tenderness, not a naive tenderness, not a naive softness, but a softness and a tenderness that is informed by understanding. So that's the wisdom aspect. The softness, the tenderness is the love and compassion aspect. But the wisdom aspect cannot be left somewhere else. It's always the two together, because bodhicitta has these two aspects to it. So a softness and a tenderness, so along those lines, a willingness to be open, be spacious, at ease, not always triggered, not always suspicious, not always paranoid, but rather, carefree, not careless, carefree. If we know how to cultivate skillful carefulness, which is provided by wisdom, then we can live more carefree. So this bodhicitta recitation at the beginning. So then in practical terms, in very concrete terms, what does it mean? It means now I engage in virtuous deeds of body, speech, and mind. From now until I achieve Buddha, from now until end of this life, from now until this time tomorrow, whenever we say this again. So now, please turn to the refuge recitation. In the Pecha, it's 77, which is the text I'm using here. In the PDF, maybe page 5, 6, somewhere around there. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent. I take refuge until Bodhi is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. So even in the Refuge and the Four Immeasurable Minds recitations, it still goes back to that single point of bodhicitta. So in the Refuge it says, I'm doing this so that I will attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings, beings who wander in confusion, wander in the cycle. Then the four immeasurables, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, they are the very stuff, so to say. They are the very essence of the Buddha state. So we train in those immeasurable minds. So next, let's see, Maurizio, are you able to share screen the PDF of the 4 sessions Guru Yoga? I've given you co-host. If you're able to share, that would be really good. Try and see what happens. So you have the PDF of the 4 sessions Guru Yoga. We are now going to look at page 13. If you have the Pecha, it's page 113. Any luck, Mao?
Am I sharing or not?
We're not seeing it yet, or at least I'm not seeing it.
Oh,
Yeah, it will come up.
I can see.
Oh, you can see. Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's my setting. Good. So everybody is able to see, yeah? Good. So now, oh, I see. Fancy. Okay. Oh, now there are many screens on Zoom. So things move so quickly, you know. You don't look for like a week, then everything has changed. Oh, I see it. Okay, very nice. Okay, we start on page 13, yeah? So, this is, it begins with what we call supplication to the lineage. So this is the lineage that myself and many others in this group are practicing under the protection and the blessings of the Drikung Kagyu lineage. Then, of course, also many of us are not just practicing following one lineage, probably have a few influences. That is common, but also common over time. You kind of, your focus comes into one. And sometimes people misunderstand, you know, oh, that is being sectarian. Sectarian or not depends on you, you know. But more importantly, it's like a diet, you know, it's like what you eat. If you don't have a stable diet, you know, constantly switching, changing, switching, changing, imagine, you know, you don't have a stable home, switching, changing, switching, changing. Not impossible to maintain good health, but for most of us, it's a challenge. So this is to get into some kind of a regular way and to stabilize that regularity. Some of us primarily practice, within one tradition, but it doesn't matter whether you feel that you're primarily practicing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. More importantly, bodhicitta. So in our book that we work on for this weekday, it's called this book. I'll say more when we get to that. In this book, the very first chapter, it says, when we speak of lineage, what are we speaking of? So the teacher, the 12th century teacher, whose teachings were written down, almost you could say unedited, written down and preserved in this volume here. He says, when we talk about lineage, he says, mainly what we're talking about, the unbroken lineage of bodhicitta. Yeah, so that's the essence. Yeah, the container of the lineage could be this lineage, that lineage. Gelupa, Sakyapa, Karma Kagyupa, and so on and so forth, Nyingmapa, or beyond the world of Tibetan Buddhism, this Buddhism, that Buddhism. That's just the outer layer, the outer shell. Outer layer needs to keep healthy, of course, like a tree, like a human body. If your skin is unhealthy, it's usually an indicator that the inside is not healthy. But the inside, what is the inside? The inside, the lifeblood, the true transmission is the transmission of bodhicitta. Bodhicitta in its two aspects of absolute and relative. So the wisdom on the one side and love and compassion from the other perspective. And these two inseparable. So that's most important. Anyway, here in the lineage recitation, specific names. So the specific way in which the transmission comes down to us in the present. I supplicate you, the Dharmakaya, great Vajradhara of the sixth family. I supplicate you, the 85 Indian Mahasiddhas. I supplicate you, Tili Pranya Bhadra. I supplicate you, Narogyana Siddhi. I supplicate you, Marpa of Lodra, the translator. I supplicate you, Mila Shepa Dorje. I supplicate you, Dao Shunu O Dapo. I supplicate you, the three Siddhas of Kam. I supplicate you, Dorje Gyopo of Pakdu. I supplicate you, Jitsun Dorje Pelda. I supplicate you, Supreme Refuge, Jikten Sumgön. I supplicate you, Dharma Lord Ranashri. I supplicate you, Kenchen Sutrim Dorje. I supplicate you, Unchen Sonam Dhagpa. I supplicate you, Chenga Dragpa Jungne. I supplicate you, Chung O Dorje Dhagpa. I supplicate you, Toka Rinchen Senge. I supplicate you, Samche Dragpa Sonam. I supplicate you, Chuni Dorje Rinchen. I supplicate you, Tuku Dorje Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Nyani Chuki Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Shenyin Dundru Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Rinchen Pelgi Gyaltsen. I supplicate you, Chogyal Rinchen Pelzang. I supplicate you, Rixin Chuki Gyatso. I supplicate you, Gyawang Kunga Rinchen. I supplicate you, Jisen Rinchen Punso. I supplicate you, Rinchen Nampar Gyawa. I supplicate you, Penchen Pelgi Gyatsen. I supplicate you, Chole Nambar Gyawa. I supplicate you, Tsume Chogyao Punso. I supplicate you, Drupchen Tashi Punso. I supplicate you, Jason Kwancho Rinchen. I supplicate you, Rixin Chuki Drakpa. I supplicate you, Konjo Tenle Namjia. I supplicate you, Konjo Tenle Sangpo. I supplicate you, Tenle Tondru Chogya. I supplicate you, Konjo Tenzin Todu. I supplicate you, Tenzin Chuki Nima. I supplicate you, Kyabda Peme Gyansen. I supplicate you, Jamyan Chuki Gyaltsen. I supplicate you, Druwa Chuki Gyaltsen. I supplicate you, Rinchen Tempe Zegin. I supplicate you, Gyalwang Tuje Nima. I supplicate you, Rixin Nuden Dorje. I supplicate you, Jason Chuki Lodro. I supplicate you, Gyalcho Shive Lodro. I supplicate you, Jason Dharma Kara. I supplicate you, Trisab Tenzin Tubden. I supplicate you, the Dapoka, you protectors of wandering beings. I supplicate you, my kind root Guru. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the rarity of the freedoms and endowments. I still squander away my life. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on impermanence and death. I still fixate on composite phenomena as permanent. To look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the unmistaken nature of cause and effect. I still pervert what to adopt and what to abandon. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the sufferings of cyclic existence. I still take the way to the lower realms. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I safeguard the vows of individual liberation. I still lack renunciation and the determination to be free. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on all wandering beings as my parents. I still have bias attachment to friends and aversion for enemies. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate loving kindness and compassion. I still hold on to envy and enmity. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate aspiration and action bodhicitta. I still focus only on my own welfare. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on my body as the deity's exalted form. I still cling to ordinary perception. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I have counted the mantras to be recited. I still waste away my life force. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate the samadhi of moon in the water. I still solidify things as real and substantial. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I conclude by dissolving in the subsequent stage. I still purify and confess superficially. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, Reckless and mundane, although I meditate on my own mind as free from elaborations, I still have conceptual attitudes look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I cultivate, not grasping at whatever arises, I still affix an artificial watchfulness look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I cultivate resting freely in the natural state, I still amplify artificialities look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I meditate on unity beyond conceptions, I still get carried away by the masses of likes and dislikes look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I supplicate you who are my refuge and protector, in this and all other lives, physician who removes the chronic diseases of samsara, hero who vanquishes the enemies that are afflictive emotions, sun which dispels the darkness of ignorance, moon that protects from the heat of suffering, jewel which fulfills all our needs and desires, you Guru who are all-inclusive and all-sufficient, I supplicate you from the depths of my heart. With compassion swiftly heed me, effortlessly bestow your blessings. Grant me now and on this seat the naturally accomplished feast of the two benefits. I am endowed with both merit and devotion. Do not leave my hopes unfulfilled. Don't cast away my devotion in vain. Don't let my supplications vanish unanswered. Don't be indifferent with your compassion. Refuge and protector in this life, in the intermediate state and beyond whatever occurs. Joy or sorrow, good or bad, only you are my hope. Look upon me with eyes of compassion. You alone are my hope. So, as practitioners of the Buddha Dharma, all of us have a common guru, meaning Buddha Shakyamuni. Buddha Shakyamuni is the common guru, the common guide for all of us. So here, when we supplicate the guru, we can think of Buddha Shakyamuni. Then you say, well, why is there a need? Why not just Buddha Shakyamuni? So this is a way, a method to just create for ourselves, a more, you could say, closer, a more intimate experience of Buddha Shakyamuni as a guide that is a constant guide. If we turn our minds to the Buddha, then the Buddha mind, without even any need to think, to react, to plan, the Buddha mind immediately comes in our direction. So to not let our Dharma practice, although, of course, some people, their practice of the Buddha Dharma is very, I don't know, for lack of a better term, very clinical. Just getting the business done. And for some people, that works seemingly nicely for them. Then no problem, That is what resonates for you. That's what works for you. In this method, in this tradition, what it offers is developing this more kind of more personal, more intimate, more close presence of the Buddha. So Buddha Shakyamuni is the Lord of Dharma. So if we turn our minds to the Buddha, then this supplication, even though, right, of course it is presented as a supplication, as a prayer. Prayer, right? The old meaning of the word prayer, before all kinds of religious baggage came into the picture. Its most basic meaning is just to ask. So like in the old days, people would talk to kings like that, I pray you, I ask of you. So we're asking, right? What are we asking? So what we're asking here is the Guru's blessings. What is blessings? Blessings is inspiration, to be inspired. Then the work, the lifting, the actual lifting we have to do. And what we have to do, actually this supplication lays out in a very systematic way the stages to develop. These are stages to develop within our own hearts and minds. These are not just things, to check off. Oh yes, I have thought of this. 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 But these are the stages of the path that we have to work on having them arise within our own hearts and minds. Otherwise, Dharma just remains, as a set of ideas. No doubt, we may feel it's a set of very impressive ideas. In fact, it's a set of ideas that I like so much. But if, we don't work on letting this become stages within our hearts and minds. How? Well, it's not like getting a recipe to cook some food, where you measure how many ounces of this, how many ounces of that, sift it, mix it together. It doesn't happen like that. Why? Because our life, generally doesn't happen like that. So a lot of patience. Patience is that aspect of giving yourself a lot of space. Then patience, within that space, also equally important to cultivate attention. If it is so spacious until you space out, as we say, then not very beneficial, because the conditions of samsara will come and shake you up and shake you out of your spaciousness. If all you're doing with the space is you space out. But that space, while cultivating the space, we cultivate attentiveness, attention, skillful attention, skillful attentiveness. These days, I guess the word more commonly used is mindfulness, but this attentiveness is paying attention, skillful attention. Skillful attention or attentiveness frees us, brings us more freedom, so that whatever that comes our way can be lighter, can be less of a burden, including things that we label as happy and desirable and good. Often that also becomes heavy. So we also need to learn how to allow all the things that arise in our lives to have a certain quality of being less burdensome, lighter. So anyway, we tend to do this set of opening prayers as a way of practicing, as a way of reminder. Usually I don't give that much explanation. Since we are restarting the series, I thought it's good to have a reminder as to what is it that we're doing for these recitations. So now the text that we study daily So first of all, this text, it's called the Great Drikung Teachings to the Assembly. So again, if somebody can share in the chat, and perhaps you all also, those of you who know, and know where you can, where people can get a copy of this if they want, then please also share the link of how to get a copy. But I don't know. Maybe it's also good if you don't have a copy, because sometimes, it's a habit that we have. When we have words, printed on paper, some of us relate to that with, oh yeah, I have the book, and never really pay attention to it. Then some of us do the opposite, and then sometimes we do both. What's the opposite? Now you have, black ink on paper, you scrutinize every word. You look at here, and then you say, oh, but look at here. Oh, but then look at here. Oh, but then look at here. And then look at here. Then very soon, you're all tied up. Try to remember, the extemporaneous quality of these words. So in particular, this collection called the Great Drikung Teachings to the Assembly, internal evidence suggests that this collection, which consists of 30 teachings, internal evidence suggests that these were transcript of teachings that the founder of Drikung Kagyu, called Kagyupa Jikten Sumgön, that Kagyupa Jikten Sumgön in the 12th century, at one point spent 30 days together with a group of disciples, and every day he would give a short teaching. And each of those teachings becomes one here. And altogether here, there are 30 teachings. So these 30 teachings, in their original form, they were extemporaneous teachings given by Kagyupa Jikten Sumgön or Kagyupa Rinpoche to his disciples. So in that sense, these words were never meant to be scrutinized, like a philosophical treatise, like a book that is written and then edited and re-edited and proofreaders, and like if you have been involved in the production of a book, often these days, like well done books takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years of editing and scrutinizing. But this is not one of those. So try to remember the extemporaneous and also the originally ephemeral nature of these instructions. Words that are just given, disciples heard, and for the most part, they were just listening, not writing down. Then you don't have, well, 2 days ago, in the second paragraph, you said, so those are just unnecessary ways of reading this that just creates more confusion. So try to remember as we go through this material. In a way, right, going through this material is just a reference point for you and me to infuse our minds with the Buddha Dharma. Right? It's just a reference point. In a way, you could say, this book becomes a grounding factor, a reference point, or even an excuse for me to share the Dharma with you without me making up things. So we ground it, we center it on the words from this volume here. So maybe not having the books, but also just listening, as the original, audience, the original recipients of these teachings also did. They just heard. So these Buddhist sutras all start with, "Thus have I heard," not "Thus have I read." Reading was available. Writing was available during the Buddha's time. But for the first couple of 100 years, very intentionally, the early Buddhist community did not commit these teachings into writing. So we can think a little bit about what is the significance of that. It's not the case that writing and reading was not available. It was available. But for at least 200 years, the Buddhist community did not write down the teachings. So there's something about orality. I think it's both, right? Orality requires attentiveness, of mind. Orality also then involves necessarily a different kind of relating to the teachings than if they were written down and then you can refer to 7 books and counter reference and all of that. That definitely did come later, for sure. Buddha started to compose texts in that manner, but not definitely not the content of this volume here. So we finished the 12 teachings the last time we met, 2-3 months, maybe more months ago, and on the Drikung Dhammakirti YouTube channel, there is a playlist called the Great Drikung Teachings to the Assembly, and you can look at the playlist for all the previous 12 teachings that we have covered. So now is the 13th teaching. So the topic heading, which I believe is given by the translator, again probably not in the original, is distraction as the cause of samsara. Samsara is the circle. Here, circle doesn't connote completion, right? In some contexts, circles connotes completion, completeness, like the full moon. Here, circle is talking about the circular nature of confusion. So samsara as a circle, because confusion feeds upon itself and generates itself and then keeps going on and on and on and on. And what is the cause? The cause of this wandering on in confusion is a distracted heart, a distracted mind, distraction. The precious teacher taught the following. So this is the transcriber, the person who transcribed these teachings, said the precious teacher, meaning Kagyupa Rinpoche, Jikten Sumgön, the founder of Drikung Kagyupa, the precious teacher taught the following. What is the cause from which samsara, with its 3 realms, this ocean of suffering, arises? What is the cause of the arising of this cycle? The 3 realms are the sensual realm. Us human beings are part of the sensual realm. Then a more refined realm of existence is called the realm of forms. So here forms has the sense of subtle form, not like the form that you and I have, which is solid, much more solid and kind of gross. So the next realm of existence is the realm of pure subtle form, called the rupaloka. The sensual realm is kammaloka. Then there's also the arupaloka. The arupaloka is the formless realms. But all these three realms are still within this cycle of confusion. So what is the cause? From where did this come from? How did it arise, this ocean of suffering? So because of confusion and its consequences, then it manifests as suffering, as dukkha. There is dukkha because there is minds. If there were no minds, then there's no dukkha and there's no sukha. So a rock doesn't have capacity to experience this as dukkha and this as sukha, this as suffering and this as happiness. But we have minds, so then we have the capacity to experience this as suffering and this as happiness. Then this capacity is also then the capacity to be distracted. So here it says, where does it arise from? Samsara, with its three realms, this ocean of suffering, it arises from a distracted mind. It arises from a distracted mind. When the mind becomes distracted, distracted from what? So here, general teachings of the Buddha on the general level, in the general context. For example, if we look at the famously the Four Noble Truths, right? There, it says, first noble truth, there is dukkha. Second noble truth, dukkha has its cause, and its cause is grasping. And then third, this dukkha has an end to it, can be put to an end, called cessation. Then this cessation is possible through a process, through a path, and the Four Noble Truths, right? So their grasping is identified as the cause of samsara. Here, distracted mind. So then here, it's not that it is contradicting the Four Noble Truths. Is the deeper, the kind of more subtle level of understanding the Four Noble Truths, which is, when you come right down to it, it pertains to the mind or the heart. So if we say that the distracted, so here it says, right, Kyoba Rinpoche said, the distracted mind is what gives rise to samsara. So distracted from what? Distracted from its own nature. To be confused about its own nature. Its own nature has no self. But we got distracted and projected self onto this mind. So here the distraction is to be distracted from the mind's nature. The mind and its nature is the main focus of like Mahamudra training, the Great Seal. But even in those cultural areas that don't use this kind of language, Mahamudra and this and that, you can also see, you can catch glimpses of them understanding the Four Noble Truths as essentially pertaining to the mind and its confusions. Confused about what? Confused about its own nature. So one forest monk of the last century, Ajahn Tate, maybe. Anyway, a forest monk in Thailand. He expresses the Four Noble Truths in a way that is really reminiscent of like Mahamudra way of talking. He says, the heart that has wandered outwards, the heart, or the heart not knowing itself, that is what suffering is. Then not knowing itself, it wanders around, is the cause. So this wandering is the distraction. When the heart, when the mind knows itself, that is the cessation of suffering. Training in how to know one's own mind and stabilizing that is the path to the end of suffering. The result of the mind having become confused about itself is what we call suffering. Yeah, so here, saying the same thing. It arises from a mind that is now distracted, a heart that is now distracted from its own nature. Then the nirvana of the three kinds of awakening arises from the samadhi, the meditative absorption of calm abiding and insight. And so here, if you recall, Gyalpa Rinpoche uses this expression a lot in this collection, what's known as the three kinds of awakening. And so he says there are three levels of bodhi. And then, of course, this is not just him. It's in all the Indian sources. I think in later Tibetan Buddhism, they tend to not talk about the three kinds of bodhi because the emphasis has become completely on the third kind, which is the bodhi or the awakening of perfect Buddhas. But in earlier sources, there is the bodhi or the awakened, the awakening state, the awakened state of the hearers, the shravakas, then the awakened mind of the solitary realizers, and then the awakened mind or the awakened state of the complete and perfect Buddhas, the Samyasam Buddha, those Buddhas. So here, Gyalpa Rinpoche says, the nirvana, right, the end of suffering of these three types of bodhi, they all, he says, regardless whether it's the hearer's kind of awakening, the solitary realizer's kind of awakening, or the perfect and complete Buddha's way of awakening, they all arise from the samadhi of calm, abiding, and insight, shamatha, vipassana. Here, shamatha and vipassana isn't necessarily talking about specific techniques, These days, when people use shamatha and vipassana, invariably they tend to be referring to specific techniques, specific types of meditation, even specific traditions of meditation. But here, he's talking about more, not so much the specific techniques or methods, but that a mind that has both this ability, a mind that has cultivated the ability to abide without moving, to abide without ups and downs, to abide evenly and with insight, with wisdom, with special insight, with superior understanding, which is what vippassana means, or vipassana. V is in Sanskrit, the V is like a heightener. So heightened seeing, clear seeing, seeing without confusion. So this is again, I already alluded to this when we started. The mind that is open and spacious and stable. That is shamatha. Then the mind that has wisdom, attentive, present, not spaced out. So they warn about falling into dull shamatha states, which is the equivalent of a spaced out mind. So spacious until, it's gone in the wrong direction. So insight, can also go wrong, can also go haywire. That is what we call obsessiveness. In a way, maybe it's encouraging, Obsessiveness is basically insight, but slightly off, and the result is completely different. It can be so laser-like, but then completely creating a lot of suffering. Laser accurate, so to say, focus, not focus, but looking at something, but then completely bound, completely tight. So he says, the meditative absorptions, the samadhi of calm abiding and insight, is what gives rise to nirvana. On the other hand, a distracted mind is what gives rise to samsara. That's basically that first paragraph there. So in the next paragraph, he provides an explanation. What is a distracted mind? Distracted from what? Not seeing what? Forgetting what? That's in the next couple of sections, next couple of paragraphs. Then this chapter is actually some very profound, some very subtle and profound instructions. And I've said before, when we were studying this, when we started, I for one don't pretend I know, exactly what is said here, because we sometimes tend to forget, these instructions were given to people who have not beginners, in other words, people who have a taste and an experience of training the mind, training the heart. But nonetheless, what is a unique, I think, feature or characteristic of... So this text belongs to a particular genre of Tibetan Buddhist texts called Teachings to the Assembly, or the Assembly Dharma, literally. Sok Chu. Chu is Dharma, Chok is assembly. Chok, or accumulation or gathering. So This is Sokcho. Sokcho is Dharma for the assembly. I think after the 13th century, maybe at most 14, you don't see compilations of Sokcho anymore. And I don't know very well, but I think the teachings that have this general title as dharmas for the assembly, this kind of collection seems to have been particular to the early Kagyupa communities. And so there, I think it reflects something about the way in which instructions and guidance take place among the early Kagyupas. Later, right, the Kagyupas, by and large, became more and more like everybody else. And then everybody else also became more and more like everybody else. The early Kagyupas, meaning up to around 12th century, those communities tended to be small, tended to be localized, and also there is a sense that there are teachings given by the teacher that is specific to the needs of particular individuals. Then there are teachings given by the teacher to the assembly. Not quite general public, okay? But the assembly of disciples. Now they have gathered. So then whatever the teacher spoke is understood to have more or less significance for everyone, rather than the more personalized, the more directly relevant to this person or that person type of teachings. So for example, using Kyoba Jikten Sumgön's case, there are currently about 800 to 900 teachings, long and short. Some are like 100 pages, some are like half a page. And there's 800 to 900 teachings that are said to be words of Kyoba Jikten Sumgön. Out of that, 10 maybe? 10, somewhere around there. Texts carry this title called Sokcho, teachings for the assembly. The rest are not considered teachings to the assembly because they were not given to a gathering of disciples, but given to specific disciples. So the sense here is, I think, when there are teachings given to specific disciples, when we read those teachings, when we hear those teachings, we have to remind ourselves, not everything here, has universal relevance or application. Of course, in time, when you read more and you experience more these teachings, you can find the relevance to you, you can find the significance to you. But if at first read, right, of these teachings that are not meant for the general assembly, and if you read it and you find that, oh, that's kind of strange, you have to remember, it's strange to you. It has some relevance to the original intended recipient of this teaching. Whereas teachings found in that are called Sokcho, dharmas for the assembly, generally the contents has relevance and application for everyone. So now the other book there is also blue, the one that we just published recently. You can't really see. called The Sublime Speech of Drikung Kyopa, a collection of instructions from Drikung Kyopa Jikten Sumgön. Now, about a little less than maybe 83 or 85 titles, teachings are in this small volume. Yeah? Here, they are not sutra. They are not dharmas for the assembly. In fact, some of them have names of specific persons and say, I gave this to so-and-so. I wrote this letter to so-and-so, for so-and-so. So in a way, kind of relative to this, what you read here, you have to remind yourself. Some of it may not have relevance for me. Here, most of it would have relevance. Yeah, so relative to each other. Of course, at the end of the day, all these teachings can have relevance for us, can guide us, can help us. But it's a matter of, are we ready to digest what is contained in them? So anyway, I think we will end here this morning. Thank you for joining. So the plan is to be on every weekday, Monday to Friday, at 9 a.m. New York time. In a couple of weeks, I think time is going to change or something like that. End of what we call daylight savings time, and we'll go into Eastern Standard Time. But when we get closer to that, I will remind everyone. I know many of you live in places that don't do this time-changing business, so it can be kind of confusing. But it won't happen, I think, so soon, because, in fact, we will stop this before it happens, I think. I am leaving for Asia on the 24th of September. So this will be, but I didn't want to not do anything at all between now and then. So then I restarted this. So we will meet up until maybe, I think the 24th is a Tuesday or something like that. So let's see, maybe we'll meet on 23rd, maybe not. It's hard to say, depends on how much of running around like a headless chicken I will be when we get to that point. So anyway, the plan is to meet every weekday from now until I have to leave. Then when I'm in Asia, I don't know. Let's see what the schedule is over there. I may be able to do some of this, but it's hard to say. Yeah, I'll be in Asia for almost 3 months because His Holiness the Drikung Kyabgön, head of the Drikung Kagyu lineage, is doing a major transmission. Kind of once in this lifetime that he's doing this, then you have to wait for his next lifetime, when he'll do this again. So I will be there for that. So we end, as usual, with the dedication of merit, using the famous dedication that was attributed to Nagarjuna, the Bodhicitta dedication. The meaning of this dedication is, excellent and precious Bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. And we'll chant in Tibetan for those of you who know this chant. And if you don't know, it's nice to memorize it. Chanju sem cho rinpoche ma ge ba nam ge gyu che ge ba nyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du the worship. Okay, thank you. See you all tomorrow if you are able to join. Don't worry, no commitments, no expectations. You come when you can. You take as much as you can, as much as you need. Yeah. Okay, tata everyone. Bye bye.